Hey, Paul. You there, Paul?
That's fine. How's that, mate?
Yep, perfect.
Great. How do you see yourself and thinking that you might be going to?
Hang on, let me just get rid of the waiting room.
We've got a few minutes, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just in the visitors' car park of a prison.
Right, well, I'm just going to go and pour myself a beer on the side here, okay? 2 secs.
Right, go for it.
You know, with the ranch, I bet you should. I was gonna say with the ranch, I want people gonna think we're trying to break them out, but you know the bed in here.
Lots of bands in here. My smoke tea. Morning. I'm good. How are you?
Good, mate. Nice to meet you.
All tucked up.
Yeah.
With nowhere to go.
Nice to meet you, mate. How's it going? Hey,
That's
buddy.
my youngest, Elijah.
All right, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I just saw the band fly out.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was escort, was it? Because it was an escort truck.
Yeah.
behind
I'm
it.
stuck on response today.
Uh-huh.
Wayne, Anthony.
Hello, mate. How you going?
Pleased to meet you. How are you?
Pleased to meet you, mate. How's things? All right?
Yeah, good.
Hello, mate. How you going? What's your name? Elijah. Anthony. Pleased to meet you, mate.
Got
How you going?
got some pips on the shoulder.
Yeah.
Top heavy.
Top heavy, big shoulders. Yeah.
Do you want to park your van around our side?
Oh, I don't mind.
Yeah, jump in. I'll show you around. Just drive around the corner and our office is just around there.
The wall and turn right.
All right. Jump in, midget boy.
Why'd you put it in my door?
Because I thought you'd like it.
No.
What do you mean?
See, I want to peach.
Just don't drink it. Because if you drink it, you're in trouble. Take this beanie off now. It's got
Yeah. As you keep going, you'll see the vans with big Sherpa and that. Just park within that car park.
all right, cool. Thank you.
You
Why
get
did you say it was young? Did you say it was the eldest or the youngest?
Eldest.
Oh. I heard youngest. That's cool.
I said, this is my eldest.
Yeah. But I thought you said
Oh, shoot. Shit wet here. Go on, lay down. Go on, Pop. Good boy.
You ready, buddy?
I am indeed, my friend. I am indeed.
All right, I'll start letting them in.
All right, pal.
Well, thanks everyone for joining this morning. With no further ado, I will hand it straight over to Paul.
Hey, thanks very much. Appreciate that. I will give it a few seconds, guys, just in case anybody else. I see a few more joining us. And so I'll just give it a couple of seconds. Obviously, it's morning where you are in Australia. And I know there's some friends from Europe, which must be very early in early hours of the morning. And of course, I'm located in the United States, in Alabama. And so it's in the evening here, 7 o'clock, in fact. So excuse me while I cheers you all, canine handlers around the world. But it's not a working day for me. It's the end of the working day. So I can relax and have a few beers. All right, guys, I will jump on with it. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. If not, just shout out in the chat rooms, and we will do our best, I'm sure, to get me a message to tell me that there's something wrong. But other than that, if you want to save your questions to the end, I promise you I will answer them all, and as I always do. All right. So hopefully some of you were with me last week when I talked about advanced canine detection operations and the use of search intel. Got some good positive feedback from that, so I thank you for that. But today I'm going to talk about understanding the latest advances in body-worn canine detection. But more importantly, I'm going to talk about very openly and candidly about the differences, okay? Because I think it's very important to understand that there are huge differences between traditional bomb dogs, people screening dogs, and indeed mass screening dogs, okay? For those of you that didn't join me last week, let me give you a little bit of insight into my background very briefly. Working dogs for 30 years, nothing unusual about that, but what is unusual is that 20 plus years have been in operations in hostile environments around the world, Iraq, Afghanistan for 7 years, and the British military Army Dog Unit for 10 years. Actually served over there with the Parachute Regiment before that as well, which is a British military force. So plenty of operational experience in the explosive detection dog area. I also have been involved in the sciences as a working dog advisor of the British military, and also with Auburn University's Canine Performance Science program. And that's where I first was introduced to Vaporwake and their technology, Vaporwake body-worn detection, some time ago now, almost 7 years ago. So guys, without further ado, I will move on. For those of you who never to VW Canine Academy, just thought some of you had asked a question last week. So here's an image of it, and please come and see us for sure. So who am I to talk to you guys about body-worn explosive detection? Well, let's say we are the largest, VW Canine has the largest body-worn detection canine program in the world, of which I'm the president of VW Canine. We have over a decade of experience in body-worn detection. And in fact, some of our key personnel in there have over 15 years experience in body-worn detection, right back to Richard Reed, the shoe bomber, 2001, December. We have over 116 Vaporwake or body-worn detection canines deployed worldwide. We are exclusively partnered with Auburn University's Canine Science program that have got a good track record in body-worn canine detection. And I must point out right now, I know some of you would have heard the terms Vaporwake, But Vaporwake is just a brand of ours. It's a bit like a Nike shoe in amongst all shoes. It's just our brand. We happen to have had some success over the time, and our dogs are noted out there. And because of that, people assume that Vaporwake is the discipline of body-worn detection. You couldn't be any further from the truth. I will talk a little bit more about that. And we're not going to talk about Vaporwake dogs specifically here, more the differences in the types of dogs out there that are needed. Just for your information, Vaporwake is a brand of ours. It's our brand of body-worn detection dog. It is not a discipline of dog, okay? Okay. Of course, there's been plenty of news media coverage and so on, which is just great for all of our industry guys. I'll be honest with you. Anything where canines are in good light in the media, it doesn't matter what company it is around the world, what military force, what police force, it's a positive thing, that's for sure. A little disclaimer from me. These are my body-worn explosive canine detection opinions, and they're based on first-hand experiences. I come from a really strong traditional EDD background. Those of you that were on with me last week will understand that because I've been operational in a traditional EDD sense for a long time. So I did not form my opinions on body-worn detection lightly. Trust me, there's no question that I haven't asked, which is why I welcome all your questions later on. As always, I'll be very frank during my discussion points. I do not mean to offend anyone or anybody's program or any one type of disciplines surrounding body-worn detection. So please take it as it comes, and you will have your chance to have your say. And of course, there is no such thing as a stupid question. Trust me, I've asked them all over the years. Please ask away at the end of this. And of course, challenge what I'm saying. I want you to try and challenge what I'm saying. Okay, that's the whole point of it. Okay. So most of you will know traditional static bomb dogs threats exist, okay? And we train our traditional bomb dogs to meet those threats, okay? So for example, the world's gone crazy in vehicle-borne explosive devices. We as dog handlers in a traditional explosive detection dog sense, we go out and teach a canine that vehicles are a productive area of search. If there are, you know, in Afghanistan or Iraq, we're doing route clearances and there are roadside devices and so on. You know, us dog guys back home, what we do is we take our dogs out, we start teaching our dogs to box or verge or off leash at distance, all those things to mitigate the threat, okay? Whether it's building search, whether it's baggage or anything like that, cell phones, you name it. I mean, one of the new threats currently is pipe bombs and of course, you know, even laptop type devices. So of course, as dog people, we should be going out and, you know, undoing laptops and old laptops and filling them through Semtex, RDX, whatever, and training our dogs on them. So they see them as a new productive area of search for the game of search, okay? So nothing new, traditional static bomb threats, we've met them by teaching our dogs that those areas are the new productive areas in the game of search. A lot of you will realize and understand that there are current threats that are new, reasonably new within the last decade, and they are specifically body-worn explosive and body-worn weapons attacks, i.e. mass shooter attacks and so on. There's a big problem in America here with those types of attacks. But body-worn explosive attacks and body-worn weapons attacks do require a more specialized explosive detection canine, okay? And I'm gonna explain exactly what I mean by that. It doesn't take much, guys, to look at the latest threats and attacks, even in the West. I'm not even gonna go into worldwide, but I know there's a lot of people from around the world on this seminar. And, you know, when you look at the attacks, body-worn attacks in Paris, in Belgium, in the airport, the ticketing desks, the mass shooting that happened in the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, even failed bomb attacks, New York, New Jersey, and even more recent failed attacks, the unfortunate bombing at the concert in Manchester, United Kingdom, the London attacks, the body-worn bombs that went off in Sri Lanka. There's no doubt about it, guys. If you think otherwise, domestic terrorism has truly, truly awoken, okay? And the reality is, guys, is that there is a new threat, and it is involving body-worn explosive and body-worn weapon attacks, okay? And we're going to go into a little bit more about that. And of course, our canines are at the cutting edge of detection, and we need to be thinking about utilizing this asset in a body-worn detection sense, okay? So whether you're a program manager, a security manager, a canine handler, and so on, we need to employ every tool in the toolbox. And a traditional bomb dog is vital in large threats around the world with large devices, whether it's vehicle bombs and so on. Absolutely, anything statically placed, a traditional bomb dog is still vital. But we do have to understand as security managers that there is a new emerging threat of body worn, and we need a specific tools and specific dogs for that, okay? It's important to understand that. We do need to look to new technologies, and we need to understand there is a current security gap if you do not have any way of detecting or mitigating against a body-worn explosive attack. Okay, just to complete the security gap. So I mentioned last week about intelligence gathering, how important it is. I know a lot of you will know the various magazines that are online. This is one of the largest, if you've never heard of it before, called Inspire. It is an Al-Qaeda terrorism magazine. It's published quarterly, and it will shock you, the information and the blatant in your face, this is how we're going to get you step-by-step ingredients of how to make various devices and so on. This particular issue had specific verbiage in there that was telling their jihads around the world that they were to target sporting events, mass transit routes, and ordinary members of the public. Okay, so no longer is it is the war in the Middle East, but it is come to our own shores, and it is in amongst our sporting events and our mass transit, high volume pedestrian locations, and ordinary members of the public are at risk, as we all are in the security industry. Okay. I think the realization and wake-up call for me was the Boston Marathon attack. You know, that attack really brought home to me, because I knew some of the handlers that were assigned, you know, from Boston PD and Massachusetts Bay Transit Authority, and they had religiously done the same job very, very well year in and year out for that event. And in fact, there are 11 canine teams, traditional bomb dog teams, that were assigned to the finish line, just the finish line of that event. And they did a remarkably good job, as did all the other authorities and agencies that supported the security picture. Why? When a device went off and there were 3 fatalities and people were very, very injured? Well, because they stopped a larger device. You know, had they not gone out and searched very early in that morning, and, you know, every drain, manhole cover, vehicle that was parked legally or illegally, shop fronts, windows, trash cans, and all those things, those static locations around that finish line at early hours before they marked it, taped it, and all those good things, we could have had a 500-pound or 1,000-pound bomb there waiting in that finish line, okay? But in the terrorist cell's due diligence, you had to understand that, you know, if they could have put a larger device under the cover of darkness and killed and had more fatalities, they would have done so. The reality is that they knew the likelihood of our existing security measures were fantastic and would have most likely found it. That's why there's not much more devices going off worldwide, because of all of our security efforts, okay? But the security gap, which they identified, was actually strapping a body-worn, in this case, pressure cooker devices, strapping those devices to their backs, dressed, you know, to match the sporting occasion, and walking that explosive device straight in there. Even though not in a victim-activated sense, because they wanted to discard it, set it, and then go off and detonate it and live to fight another day. Luckily, they didn't. But the reality is it really brought home to me that the body-worn detection capabilities are very, very tough to put in place. especially in events, stadiums, arenas, and large pedestrian gatherings. So that really intrigued me, realizing that there is a new security gap and that it is body-worn explosives whilst in transit. So in my world, I don't see there being traditional bomb dogs and body-worn detection dogs. I actually see there as 3 types of explosive detection canines. And I'm not talking about mine detection, all those little ancillaries. I'm just talking about in every sense of working day world in our security picture domestically. But there are 3 types of explosive detection canines. 1, our traditional explosive detection dog that concentrates on static search. 2, a people search dog, which has controlled people search. And 3, I believe there is a 3rd type of dog, which is mass screening, okay? We are in that space with our vaporweight dogs. That is our brand, not a generalization, but mass screening we see as its own discipline, okay? And we operate in the mass screening detection space, not the people search space, okay? There's a reason why we don't do that. I guess if we had airport contracts and things like that, aviation contracts, we probably would be in that space, but we are not. We do operate in the traditional dog space around the world, but we operate in the mass screening dog space. And I hope to explain to you why we operate in that space and what the difference is between all 3 of these areas. So canine productive search areas, we all know that with a traditional bomb dog, we teach the areas that we want to be productive in the game of search, okay? And whether it's buildings, baggage, vehicles, and so on. Typically, our traditional bomb dogs are not trained that people are not a productive area, okay? Or they're trained that way because, you know, our trainers have, you know, residual training odor on them, you know, or carrying training aids or putting training aids out and so on. You know, we try to not have too much contamination, but the reality is that's just not the way. When we're deployed statically, there may be armed officers around us and all those good things, okay? So typically, we don't teach our traditional bomb dogs that people are a productive area search. It's not in the training scenario that they can't smell that your trainer hasn't washed it freaking 511s for the last 2 weeks or whatever, or that there's odor in the room when he enters it before he plays the game of hide and seek in the Dutch boxes or whatever. Okay, of course they can. Okay, it's just we teach the dogs that it's not productive until we give you the parameters. Okay, in this area with this quantity and so forth and so on. All right. So typically, traditional detection dogs do not see people as a productive area of search. All right. Now, because of the current threats of body-worn attacks, many people out there are trying to take their traditional bomb dogs and add people as a productive area of search. And why not? You know, this is a current threat, and you know, it's one of those things which is fairly easy to do, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. There's no magic recipe. You simply now take that person and through various ways and teach that dog that a person can be productive in the game of search as well. And if you find the odor, it will equal reward, okay? Now, mass screening is a different area altogether. In mass screening, our canines are trained to search the air and the heat plume behind people as they move in transit, okay? And specifically, our dogs are trained that people are not a productive area. Going up to the person itself is not productive. The productive area is that distance behind, whether it's 10 yards, 15 yards, 20 yards, even if there's not a person in the room, to just head up and sample the air in a corridor or outside, doing a traverse and so on. Now, this is the area what I operate in with our teams. And this is the area I'm going to be telling you a lot more about and why we operate in this area, because it's an extremely difficult area to operate in, because there's no visual stimuli, natural stimuli that you can show the dog with his eyes before he switches to olfactory to play the game of hide and seek. Okay, it's quite difficult to operate in this space when you want him to sample nothing in the air, no visual, okay? So we're going to be talking a little bit about those areas. Most of you on here, if you've got a canine background in detection, will understand very well the old, odor, scent cone type theories that are out there, okay? If you look at the column on the left-hand side here, let's simulate a static explosive, let's say a 300-400 pound device that's in a rather large trash can that's left out. Within the first few seconds, maybe much odor particles is not being released, but over time and duration, depending on the environment, et cetera, and all those things that do change, the odor, including the explosives themselves, time, duration, space, environment, and all those things, what happens is the odor particles start to come out, start to be released, and they start to move. If you're inside, they'll start to move towards the exits and the doors and sticking to the walls and around and so on. But typically, we have this perception that there's this cone that comes out after time and duration. And it's not a bad assessment because certainly when canines come within a certain distance of where the static device has been placed and the odor has been moving left and right, trying to find exits and so forth, depending on airflows and so on, then there is that definite cone-like movement from the canines as he gets closer to the device or to the static point, realizing his area of indication, which will equal reward. It almost looks cone-like, okay? So I get it, I understand it, time and duration. We say typically 30 minutes for an aid placement here in the US because most of the nationally recognized agencies, including all the police agencies, NAPWADA, IPWADA, UPWADA, the North American Police Work Dog Association, etc. They want 30 minutes of scent time. And the reason they want that is because they want to make sure that there is odor present for the dog to be properly tested on. I get it, okay? I don't not disagree with putting a large soak time out there of 30 minutes because let's face it, most of the types of devices that we're going to be searching for have probably been in transit, in location, a lot longer than 30 minutes, depending on whether they're RC, radio control, timer power unit, or victim activated and so on, okay? I think 30 minutes in that instance is fine. Now, this is quite easy for the dog, okay? Because there's an abundance of odor, especially after a long duration in time, okay? What's more difficult, if you look over to the right column, is this new threat of a body-worn explosive attack, where typically you're not going to have someone carrying a 300 to 500 pound body-worn detection device, because quite frankly, we wouldn't need a bloody dog to look at it. We could see that he's carrying something irregular or covered, cloaked with something underneath and so forth. So typically, historically, you're looking at anywhere from a 15 to 25 pound device that's on you. Therefore, it's a lot smaller. The scent picture is a lot smaller. It is concealed and hidden. But more importantly, this person is not still. You can't tell him to stay still for 30 minutes. In fact, the pointing time where your canine is in the search area, okay, that person is transiting typically past you. And in fact, your canine olfactory comes into contact with that person or in close proximity as he's walking at pedestrian pace for no more than 2 to 3 seconds, okay? So think about that. In one hand, we place a very large device out and we want 30 minutes to make sure our dogs have got, odor. But in the next minute, we're taking that traditional bomb dog and somehow saying that he's ready to search for a smaller device hidden on a person in amongst hundreds of other people, and whilst in transit, where that device is very likely to be passing our dog's olfactory for no more than 2 to 3 seconds, okay? Think about that, right? There is a definite difficult scenario here on the right in body worn. And what we've got to do is tap into, through training methodology, into those great traits of our canines, okay, God-given olfactory system, etc. And we've got to understand that we've got to do a lot of things to make this dog able to detect this type of target moving in transit you know, and have a productive result. Okay, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we go on. Now, I'm not saying that traditional bomb dogs can't become very, very successful people search canines, or there's lots of different companies out there that are in this space, okay? You know, from body worn to PSCs to PBIEDs, I've heard them called all sorts, okay? Where they take a traditional bomb dog and they teach that a person is productive, okay? In the right setting where you've got controlled lines of people going into an event or into a government building or in the aviation sector where you can control traffic flows and be a little bit more intrusive and all those good things, okay, without people getting mad at you, these dogs absolutely can be proficient. 100% they can, okay? The problem is it doesn't transfer well to mass screening, and I'm going to explain that and explain why. So some of the typical issues around and limitations around a people screening dog, a people search dog, are intrusive search, okay? Not everybody likes to be intrusively searched. In fact, there's lawsuits now, especially in narcotics world, with intrusive search, okay? So intrusive search is a big problem. It's not the dog's fault when he's been taught that the productive area, the cookie jar, happens to be a person, okay? And the closer I can get to that cookie jar to lift the jar and see if there's any cookies inside it, the quicker I'm gonna get my reward. It's not the dog's fault, all right, that you're teaching that. It's kind of funny to me when I see these guys that teach their dogs that people are a productive area search and then spend all their time trying to get their dog away from people. Can you imagine teaching your dog that a piece of baggage or a vehicle and so on, but no, you've got to stay 20 yards away from the vehicle and you can't approach the piece of baggage or the line of baggage that's on the floor. You can't do that, or you can't go right into the corner of all the rooms. You must just stay in the middle because we don't want you to intrude, touch, or mark anything. Give me a break, guys, okay? You're teaching the dog that a person's productive, so expect it on occasion to intrusively search, which is a problem, okay? Obviously, with this method, there is a limited amount of people that can be screened, of course, because you're moving from one productive area to the next, to the next, to the next, okay? The magic 6 foot around a person is where you're trying to get into with this type of search pattern. We say the magic 6 foot because that's typically the leash length, okay? Obviously, congested lines can make opportunist target. So be careful that you're setting this people up to be screened for explosives, but just like the unfortunate events at Brussels airport, we don't need to get in. We can go into the first layer, foyer area, where the ticketing desks are, look for a group of people and detonate there, okay? They still make opportunist targets, okay? So be careful what you're creating with this type of dog and the lines and congestion that you go. One of the big issues with dogs that are trained that people are a productive area search is stereotyping people, okay? Dogs, as we all know, are far smarter than you and I. And the reality is, guys, is that dogs will stereotype people. So if you're just using certain members of your staff in their downtime or whatever, or in their work time to come and help you play Mr. Bad Terrorist, then your dog will, you know, look as people are coming towards him in a disorderly fashion. He will pick out the ones that look like your staff, whether they're wearing 511s or a certain ethnic group, or you know, wearing certain items of clothing, certain age range, because all your employees are 25 to 35. Dogs pick up on every little single thing, okay? Whether you carry a piece of equipment, you've got a certain belt, and these dogs are sharp, okay? And dogs will start to stereotype members of staff, or decoys, as we call them, that have been used time and time again, okay? It is a big problem, to the point where, why will your dog search a woman, a child in a stroller, and an old lady on the left-hand side with a headscarf on and a walking stick, and a disabled person coming in a wheelchair, when there's somebody with 5'11s walking just behind them with a green jacket on, a 35-year-old male, walking at an irregular pace because you told him to walk naturally. Of course, the dog's not going to go, I'm going to go and look for cookies in the bread bin, in the refrigerator, or the kitchen sink. No, he's going to go straight to the cookie jar and eliminate those guys. And that causes a huge lack of proficiency in the overall security picture, okay? So there are many training issues around people search dogs. You have to be very due diligent with your decoys and have to change them out completely. You have to have huge budgets to support that as well. And as you'll learn later, in our early implementation process, we never use the same decoy twice, which is extremely expensive. Typically, the training process can be anywhere from 1 to 3 months. To be quite frank with you guys, we've got traditional bomb dogs at our kennels. We typically, at VW Canines Academy, keep about 60 to 80 dogs in stock of all different disciplines. And our traditional bomb dogs, we wanted to do a video showing the differences between the 3 types of dogs. And I asked my trainers at the staff to go out and find me a pointy-eared GSD, and we'll shoot in the video at the end of the week, and I wanted to be able to search people to show that side of discipline in our video. And sure enough, 4 days later, that traditional EDD dog was screening a line of 6 to 8 people faultlessly and giving a perfect indication on the guy that had the odor. So, you know, this is not difficult, okay? There's no magic sauce to teaching a dog that already has the traits to be a great detector dog, and just teaching him that people are now productive, okay? It just gets a little bit harder when you can't keep them still or in very slow moving controlled environments. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. I want to show you a video of a typical people search dog training example. Please don't, bite the head off with the video or anything like that. It's not about who, what, where. They all have their own methods of doing it. It's more about showing you guys the intrusive search, okay? So here's a line of people, good or bad, it doesn't matter. It's not about that. But every one of those personnel are being touched, literally by the dog. And eventually the dog finds the odor and sits and so on, gets his reward, okay? Now, I know that is not a great video. I know that, okay? But it's not about the video, right? As I've just said, it's not about the video. It's about just showing you that it's very easy to teach a dog that people are now a productive area. You'll notice in the early stages, they were perfectly spaced out, perfectly still, and all those things. The aid placement was at pocket height, which is natural for the dog's olfactory level, et cetera, okay? Yes, the dog walked odor and leash control and all those things could have been tightened up and so forth, but it's more about, this is not rocket science, and nobody from VW Canine and my place is saying it is, right? This slide here, I want to show you that I have honestly online seen all sorts of people search training techniques, okay? I have seen mannequins dressed in clothes, and then dogs, because they're traditionally trained to have no people in their search area. In fact, many times we'd go into a search area and say, excuse me, can you all leave so I cannot be distracted, so my dog cannot be distracted, and I can conduct a proper search of this facility or this room and so on, okay? So transitioning a traditional bomb dog over to a people screening dog, although it's relatively easy, there are some factors, some human distractor factors and things that you've got to overcome, environmental factors you've got to overcome. So I have seen guys dress mannequins and then replace a mannequin with a person and all those good things, and then another one. And then they move and all that good stuff. I've seen people dress chairs. Okay, heck, I've done that myself about 20 years ago with clothes and all the rest of it, and then gradually sit somebody inside it, in it, and then sit another person, and then all four, and stand one of them up and move the chair and so on. And each time the dog comes in, it's like, whoa, what's this person doing here? And oh my God, he's stood up now. It's okay, get on. You know, it's a transition. And I've even seen some crazy people me, you know, dress their people in bite suits and I kid not, and smear RDX, Semtex, or whatever all over the bloody bite suit, and then, you know, almost lay a track to get the dog following odor, and I'm closing my eyes at this point, and I'll have a drink straight after it. Reward the dog with a bite at the end of it for people screening, mass screening. Excuse me. It all stresses me out when I talk about that. But, you know, the point here is that there are many innovative ways to move and transition your traditional bomb dog that we've taught productive areas as vehicles, outside areas, buildings, packages, all those good things. And we can transition them over, but it's a process that needs to settle the dog into understanding that people are now a productive area of search. Okay. Okay, so this is the world that my company operates in. And those of you who know our Vaporweight program, we certainly are not cheap. You know, some of our Vaporweight canine dogs and handler courses can go from, you know, $35,000 to $50,000 each. You know, and I don't even blink talking to you about that. And the reason not is because some of these dogs have got 18 months of actual training into the dogs, environmentally, endurance-wise, conditioning-wise, and so on, in the process that I'm about to explain to you. But that's what we've had to do to operate in this field, which is mass screening, okay? And the key differentiators in mass screening canines and this third discipline is that to truly screen people that are not in a perfect line, okay, that are disorderly by nature, moving, you know, 20, 30, 40 deep into an arena or stadium or along a high street, you know, those types of things, okay? To operate a canine with any type of efficiency in this setting, a mass screening setting, you have to teach your canine to be non-obtrusive, okay? Otherwise, we cannot possibly screen in this environment, okay? Canines also have to be like athletes. I'm not talking about a fit individual. I'm talking about athletes. Some of these dogs are doing 20 miles, clocked miles per event, back and forth screening, okay? They have to have extensive environmental conditioning. Putting your dog inside that or down in a tube train station when 1,000 people come off the tube into a track in New York or DC or whatever is intimidating for us, with the noise and the bustle and people not stopping. I don't care about you. I don't care about your dog. Okay. And just that kind of environment is super challenging. Okay. And you have to have extreme environmental conditioning to operate in that environment. And more importantly, for your dog to enjoy being in that environment and enjoying the game of search in that environment. Remember, it's all a game of search. It's not work to this dog. All right. And to have it at a proficiency, that's a key piece. So you can expect to put 12 months to 18 months training process into one of these dogs in mass screening canines, okay? In this field of mass screening, your dog has to be obedient to odor and not people. This is critical, okay? The dog has to be obedient to the odor and not people, all right? And think about that. You know, in a traditional sense, you know, our dogs know odor, but they're very obedient to productive areas that they recognize, okay? Whether it's a vehicle or whatever. You've all seen it. You've gone out with your traditional bomb dog sitting near a row of vehicles and he's gone, even though you're not ready to search and you're actually in chat mode with your friend, okay? Our dogs can become very obedient to areas that he's been taught as productive, okay? The trick here is because we don't want to give any visual stimuli, as in people or objects, so we must make the dog obedient to the odor itself and follow that odor no matter what distractions, no matter what productive areas come in its way, all right, the dog is obedient to the odor only and not people. And finally, to operate in this mass screening world, you have to get the dog's focus on smelling and searching around air and the heat plumes that come off people, okay? The heat plumes that come off of people are actually very, very dynamic. And the dog's olfactory can sense that temperature change in the environment, even very hot environments, okay? They can sense it and change and operate in that space as a productive area of search, okay? And using a person's heat plume, which is actually probably a lot longer and more dynamic than you realize, okay, can help you in mass screening, because it can extend the search area, the productive area, even if a lot of people have just gone past and continue on walking, because their heat plumes are so long and dynamic and carry the particles of explosives. You can still operate as long as you've trained your dog that this is a productive area of search. A little bit more about that and how dynamic they really are shortly. So heat plumes, you know, some of you on here may be very aware of some of the scientific work out there. In particular, there's some great academic institutes that have done some fantastic work on there. People like Dr. Gary Settles have done amazing work on thermal heat plumes. And, you know, the reality is that, you know, Auburn University Canine Science program, who we're partnered with on this body-worn detection side of things, and they own the trademark and patent for Vaporwave. But, you know, when they first started looking, Richard Reed, the shoe bomber, you know, December 2001, you know, everyone started thinking, okay, how did this person move and transit, you know, as far as he got? And more importantly, they started saying, well, hang on, this explosives or device was moving and it wasn't static. I wonder what our canines will do. You know, everywhere, wherever you were around the world, whether you were in the British Army in Northern Ireland with the Army Dog Unit, and you're cutting your oldest Nike sole out and shoving some Semtex H in there and then sellotaping it back up and walking it past your EDD dog and going, why the hell did he miss that? You know, Auburn University did the same thing, okay? And so was TSA and all our good friends there who've got a great, robust program. You know, it's extremely large. Which makes it even more difficult. But, you know, everybody was looking at this, okay? And what we realized is that heat of our body and heat through this scientists, particularly scientists' work, is the most amazing transfer for explosive particles, okay? And we initially, especially Auburn, started to do all the static body-worn typical things, you know, as we mentioned, you know, whether it was using people, dressing mannequins and all the rest of it, you know, they tried it all, as most of us have done. I used to dress chairs. But, you know, what the real breakthrough for Auburn came about 2 or 3 years later, around 2004. And after studying thermal heat plume work from Gary Settles and like-minded scientists around the world, that's when they realized that the thermal heat plumes coming off your body were much more dynamic than expected, okay? And that they could provide an active transportation system for explosive particles, and more importantly, there didn't seem to be any explosive component loss during the transportation either, okay? And a great part of Gary Settles' work was using a thing called Schlieren Photography, this kind of double-ended camera system, okay? And here's a good example of Schlieren Photography actually looking at your arm. And you can see the amount of body heat and core heat that's coming off of that arm. And in a minute, you'll see, there you go, he just tugged his sleeve. And look how much bellowing heat come out from that body. Now imagine you've got explosives on your body that are constantly releasing particles of odor, and the heat, we know through science, is a great transfer of those particles with zero loss. When you move or start walking in a dynamic fashion, your arms and your legs moving past your core body act as a bellow, just like when he tugged his sleeve there. and shoots out the heat plume, okay? And more importantly, if you're going in a set direction, every step you take forward, you're leaving this dynamic heat plume behind you in your wake, okay? And that's very important to understand, that all this heat that's coming off your body, and as you move your arms and legs, it's being forced down, almost like forced down to the ground, and then swirls behind you for some length of time. Actually, 40 to 45 seconds behind in the right environment and setting, okay? It's pretty dynamic, okay? And this is big. This is big for us. It was big for the scientists because, you know, when you looked at a heat plume of a walking individual, not only did it have great length and was very dynamic, not only could it move explosive particles, or more importantly, leave them behind in the wake as you move forward, but there was almost, because of the arm and leg movement, there was almost this wake, this bellowing effect that widened the heat plume, which gave us a more productive area if we could train our dogs to search in this space, okay, looking for the explosive particles. Now, an explosive particle or device on your body, half a pound, can you imagine how much that goes down, you know, when it's just the odor coming off of that, explosive particles coming off of that, and is 5, 10, 15 yards behind you in a heat plume, all right? You have to take your canine olfactory, not only show the canine with no visual stimuli that the heat and air behind somebody is now the productive game of search, which is now the cookie jar, but you've got to lower the threshold between parts per billion and parts per trillion, where we now know dogs can operate at, okay? You can't do that in 4 weeks, okay? This is a very long, drawn-out process, but it absolutely can be done, okay? And was achieved by Auburn and by our program that's partnered with them. So I want you to put your traditional bomb dog hat on, and I want you to look at this diagram, or this image of 150 people, heat plumes, okay, that are walking forwards, all right? And you can see that the heat plumes from a thermal perspective are very dynamic, okay? And from a Schlieren Photography perspective, scaled behind, you can see where they've come from and the heat plumes behind, okay? Now, I want you to imagine that this is an entrance to the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, okay? And one of the east gates of the many tailgate to many gates that's around there. Very difficult job to screen people there. And Darrell Needlehouse and the Arlington Fire Department, they actually have 9 vaporweight canines, and they do a fantastic job there. But let's imagine, put ourselves in a traditional bomb dog setting, and imagine that we are tasked with a newly formed personal screening dog, where we've taken this traditional bomb dog and made it understand that people are productive, okay? And we're at one end as these guys walk past. Now, we may start moving, but at the minute we're static, and wherever we go, we are searching a productive 6-foot area around us, okay? Because that's the mentality of searching a bag or a box or whatever that we teach our traditional bomb dogs. So if that dog was stationary at one end, 80% being conservative here, chance of a productive find. If somebody was carrying explosives past the dog, probably within 2 to 3 deep personnel. And then, as you can see, the further we go away, 6 to 8 deep, 14, 20, 25 people deep, walking past you at a snapshot moment in time, clearly your ability to be proficient, or canine's ability to be proficient, is greatly reduced, okay? Greatly reduced, all right? And this is the visual that you need to understand. So if a suicide bomber, the red stars there that was going past, you know, 14 to 16 people deep, because he sees the canine and where the traditional bomb dog that's now a people screening dog is positioned, all right, we have got a 20% chance of detecting that. And I'm being super conservative, guys. I mean, the reality is he's probably got no chance, okay? Now, some of you may be saying, but what about the wind and direction? We'll put the dog downwind and so on. Guys, in my experience, you know, 150 people in front of you make the best windbreaks ever. And a lot of these pedestrian places, government buildings, railway stations, subways, urban environments outside of an arena or stadium are in built up areas with 6-foot walls, nice plants, shrubbery, and all the rest of it. You're not getting perfect wind patterns there. Now put your dog in amongst the best windbreak of all, 100, 200, 300 people around him at his olfactory level. Give me a break, all right? Wind doesn't play that much in this game, all right? So clearly it is a challenging environment, having masses of people walking past you, multiple layers deep at any one given moment in time. Okay, so probably a better visualization for you. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to take another quick sip here because it's my evening. Probably another visual here is a vehicle car lot, okay? So let's say the vehicle's in front of you. Let's say you and your traditional bomb dog are sat in front of the yellow Audi in the front there. And let's say you are tasked to search 10 rows of 10 vehicles, so 100 vehicles that are in front of you. If I said to you, I want you, the wind's coming towards your direction, I want you to remain by the yellow vehicle for however long you think it needs you to search those 100 vehicles, 10 rows of 10 in front of you, let me know without moving once they're complete. I would dare say there's not many people on this call, and if there is, I'll offer you a free class at my academy, that would say all these vehicles are clear of explosives, all right? Now, let me take it a stage further. I'm now going to give you the opportunity to walk straight down the middle of those 10 rows of 10 wide vehicles and get to the other end, and I'm going to tell you, did your dog show any change of behavior on any of the 100 vehicles? You guys are going to be looking at me the same way as you would have looked at me with my last comment and gone, there is no way I can justify and honestly say that those 100 vehicles have been searched. I might be able to say the right-hand side of the middle row is possibly good to go. I wouldn't even put my name to that, all right? All right, so now I'm going to take it a stage further. I'm going to tell you, all right, you're allowed to do S's zigzag through all the major roads that divide the 2 layers of cars on each row for the 10 rows, okay? Again, you're going to get to the end and you will not, hand on your heart, tell me that those 100 vehicles have been cleared of any possible explosive devices. No, what you're going to insist upon is that you do some sort of 360 around each vehicle, possibly with an overlap, or some sort of S formation, depending on the time of the operation, ensuring that you get most quarters of the areas you go through, or that you want to do some sort of free search, then come back and systematically search around each vehicle, all right? I understand it. I've been there. I've operated in this space, okay? I've looked for a 500-pound bomb at Belfast International Airport car park, searching 500 cars. Trust me, I searched every one of them, not only in a 360, but with a huge overlap, whilst also looking for any suspension that was lowered, et cetera, et cetera. So I get it, guys. I think you can all probably agree that you would need to do a systematic search around each individual vehicle the best you could to hit the seams and close proximity to get within that magic few feet of a productive area, okay? So with that in mind, look at this image. What the hell's the difference, guys? If there's 100 people in front of you that are, you know, being taught, your dog's been taught that they are productive, not talking about mass screening now, I'm talking about a traditional bomb dog that was taught that vehicles are productive, then being taught that people are productive, okay? If you have to go round a 360 of each one of those vehicles or as close to it then don't tell me that you do not have to get up within 6 foot of each one of these productive areas that your dog's now been taught. The reality is, if you come across an arena stadium entrance like this, to search this with a productive dog that's been trained that people are productive, to get every one of them and say, hand on your heart, that this 100 that have just walked past have been searched, you would literally have to shout, stop, everybody stand still, so I can come up within a magic 6 foot of you and see if you're, and give my dog the best chance of productive area search. All right. Now, that's if they're static. Now imagine this scenario, okay, or the one prior. Imagine if those 100 vehicles that you're just about to search started moving, okay, and started slowly all driving forward. How much harder has that just made your search? That's what happened, guys. These guys aren't standing still for you. These guys aren't being the perfect cookie jar for you. They don't give a shit about you. They want to get into the game or into the building or into the concert, and they want to grab a beer and a bite to eat. They thank you for doing a great job and protecting them. But the reality is that the only people, if you're walking through that crowd with a dog that's been trained that people are productive, every time that dog puts his nose up and around the person, that person is being searched. Maybe within 2 or 3 people, 6 or 5 foot, 6 or 10 foot around that person. Okay, I'll give you that. But the rest of them are walking past you unsearched. Fact. So the way we deploy our vaporweight dogs in a mass screening capacity, guys, is we spend a lot of time training them that people aren't productive and that the heat plume and the air behind people is productive in a traverse type manner, okay? So we'll allow 5, 6, 10, 15 people to go past, and we'll teach the dog a traverse pattern and staying on the traverse, okay, just sampling the air and the heat. And we'll take their olfactory threshold down so low, and obviously this is later on through all the initial stages of training, okay, what I'll talk briefly about, give some tips on later on, okay? But what we're doing is we are positioning our dogs not in amongst the craziness, but further out from their intended entrance target and so forth, okay? Remember, security barriers, is pushing the chances of fatality and reducing it the further out it goes, okay? We want, where they're coming, using a stadium example, from the tailgate area, the vehicle area where they party before the game, and then as the game gets close, what they tend to do is in their droves, they come and start heading down very large subways and pathways and so on towards the stadium. That's where we want to be with our vaporweight dogs. And we stand to one side and we allow these pedestrians, depending on heat, depending on the amount of people and all those things, okay, and how much of a runoff area we've got, should our dog show change of behavior, what we do is set our dogs up to traverse in amongst those people, sampling the air, okay? And all of a sudden, if somebody walks past, like in this scenario, leaving explosive particles behind in their wake, the dog is not individually looking at the people, he's looking for that odor, all of a sudden, bang, he shows it, change of behavior. He's obviously going to turn in, guys, and because he doesn't want to turn away where particles, where the decoy or the terrorist has just come from, because that'll be prolonging his reward. He wants to turn in, okay, to speed up the chance of his reward, because this is a game of search, okay? So we set the traverse up. We don't let the dog go to individual people. We focus on the heat plumes and air and making his way through the people, okay, while sampling the air. All of a sudden, he comes across a minute amount of explosive odor particles because his threshold's been taken down so low through very long training processes, and he turns. Yep, I'm on it. And of course, it gets easier the further he goes. And he will literally barge people out of the way because he's following almost like a red ribbon of odor to whoever has walked past him at that space in time. And that person can be one of 10, 20, 30 people that's just walked past you, that you as a dog handler pick up your pace, your walking pace, that's quicker than the pedestrian walking pace, okay? And obviously you'll very quickly depending on how quickly you're doing your traverse and how many people you're letting go, you'll very quickly get behind the person or persons that your dog has shown interest on. And of course, you can then go through your standard operating procedures and all those good things to hand off that potential terrorist or suspect to the authority or security partner who you're working with. And I'll talk a little bit about that actions on a little later on. Even if somebody is carrying explosives, like in the Boston Marathon scenario, okay, and they discard the bag, all right, the odor still remains with the bag. Even though there's residual odor on the person, that would be prolonging the dog search. You'll see him come across it, go on a little bit, realize that he's prolonging his reward, and come back and just plant his ass down, okay? Here is a police officer in Amtrak, in the substation, doing a great job as a static barrier, moves out the way, lets people come through, dog goes across, the plumes, bang, he's on odor. Get out my way. I don't see people as productive. I'm just following the red ribbon of odor. Clearly, the device is in there. Watch the overshoot. And no, this is where the odor is going to speed up my search. She hit that woman there, just walked past, has been screened. She didn't even realize it. He is doing the right job. His job is to be a deterrent to people going into the train station. All right? Doing a great job. Now, last minute, he walks out the way and non-obtrusively screens behind them. Bang. Great job, little overshoot. No, this is going to speed up my reward. Okay, one more time. She's just been screened, didn't even realize it. Vaporweight dog, look how strong he is, look how confident he is in that environment. Good barrier positioning by the police officer. Move out of the way last minute. Screens across, bang. Get out my way. Got odor. Good job. And we'll talk more about, and I'm going to show you a lot more operational videos a little bit later on. But I get asked this question all the time. Stand up. Not that question. I get asked breeds, why do you mostly use Labradors and so forth? Okay, look, initially we were working with Auburn University. Of course, we were in the early days and so on. And of course, Auburn, in true, academic scientific research, with great funding and everything else, went out and did their search. I mean, okay, we know we need a dog for this very challenging mass pedestrian transit environment. And we know we need the usual traits, et cetera, et cetera. We probably need additional this, additional that. And so they did a search on what type of breeds would be suitable. Okay, and of course, you won't be surprised to know that all the traditional detection type breeds came back as being possibilities, okay? They actually went with favoring the Labrador just because it's kind of the #1 domestic pet and so forth and so on. And, it called for a dog to be non-obtrusive, environmentally, socially trained and conditioned, but more importantly, to be accepted by the public, okay? As much as I love a German Shepherd, love them, as much as I love a Mal, okay, as good as their detection olfactory traits are, with their 190 plus million scent cells, however, a Labrador does have 220 plus million scent cells, but as much as you can understand that those pointy-eared breeds are absolutely as good as in detection and olfactory protection. Okay, the reality is this: public have a misconception or perception of those types of pointy-eared dogs having apprehension, patrol, aggressive tendencies, whatever you want to call it, okay? It's just the reality, guys. I hate dogs being misjudged and all those good things, just like the next person. But the reality is members of the public and mass screening and government and going into installations and travelers going into airports and all those things, they will grab their child and do a 20-yard half circle loop around your canine at traverse area or checkpoint area just to avoid getting their child or themselves anywhere close to a German Shepherd or a Malinois or those types of pointy-eared breeds because of misconceptions, and you can't deny that, okay? And if selecting a floppy-eared breed, okay, gets them to naturally walk along their path, okay, so we can actually, dog handlers, see somebody trying to evade the canine checkpoint rather than everybody trying to evade the canine checkpoint with the Malinois on it, okay, then that's what you've got to do if you want to operate at the highest proficiency, okay? In my world, there is one thing, and it's proficiency. I told you guys that last week, okay? Proficiency, proficiency, proficiency. Does this course make your dog handler better? Does this advanced explosive detection course make my basic dog handlers better? Yes, then I'm fucking paying for it. Does this piece of equipment make it better? Does this breed selection have a better, will it do a better job? Has it got better traits, better energy levels, better this, better that? Is it perceived better in the public eye, and all those good things? If the answer is yes, and a floppy-eared breed gives your dog a better chance of getting in the heat plume of somebody that is not trying to evade a checkpoint, and in the overall security picture allows you to identify, without even using a canine, through your perception, your vision that you should have at all times in search awareness, somebody trying to evade the checkpoint, then use the floppy-eared breed, okay? The moment you use a pointy-eared breed, you have reduced the proficiency of your body-worn detection dog. And that is just fact, okay? Obviously, in a typical Auburn fashion, we actually started our Labrador breeding program in the Auburn universities with the fabulous, and I know I've got a lot of Australian watchers on here now, Australian Customs. Okay, your Australian Labrador Customs program is absolutely world-renowned and one of the best out there. The Auburn guys, you know, took all the quality traits from your lines and mixed them with the US hunting Labrador lines and created their own kind of bloodlines, which we still use to this day. You know, we spend a lot of time environmentally and socially conditioning our dogs. Not all of our dogs come from the Auburn program because, quite frankly, they can't keep up with demand for our dogs. But, you know, environmental raising, our puppies, VW Canine has its own Labrador breeding program as well as Auburn University, you know, because it's so important. But literally from 12 weeks to 6 months, there's a lot of environmental raising and social conditioning, you know, getting these dogs out into stadiums and arenas and around people and around children. Even a simple thing like running children can have major consequences later on if you have not exposed a personal screening dog to those children at a very, very young age, okay? You know, we have a $20,000 PA system in our kennels that's playing a lot of noises, urban noises, mass pedestrian noises, horns and all those things, air brakes in those environments, trains and so on. It's so damn important because it's such an intimidating environment. I have literally seen traditional bomb dogs go down in New York into the substation when a train comes rushing in, the brakes and the airs and everything else and so on, and masses of people come up. I have seen a traditional bomb dog that before it come in was like a dream, and after it left was shaking, literally stopped searching, no more use to us, and shaking in its paws because of that. It's such an challenging environment, and you've got to install this. It's not enough for you to go out there and quickly turn your EDD dog into one of these dogs, or to go and purchase an 12 to 18 month old dog out there and you have no understanding of its history. It just becomes so much more challenging. I'm not saying it can't be done. We do it because such is supply and demand. But, you know, 70, 80% of our dogs are coming from our own programs where we can take the time to environmentally raise them, socially condition them, ready to become mass screening canines, okay? Second part of the Auburn breeding program is pretty cool. It really guarantees some very high breeding program figures in the high 80s of success percentile, which for those of you that run breeding programs out there know that's extraordinary. But one of their successes has been utilizing prison systems, 2 in Florida, 1 in Georgia, where inmates, specially selected for the program, 6 months get access to future vaporweight dogs in here. And they basically pair up with this handler and they go through a series of games and training to which we prepare them for. But as you can imagine, it's a very noisy, very scary environment. A lot of big scary men and a few programs with a few scary women in there as well. But no, they're taught a lot of games, like games that are not where they lead, where they get their heads up, not down, where they're not taught to be restricted in any way and so on. We want these dogs heads up and air scenting. So a lot of the games are focused around that and being out in front and dominating the handler. It's totally different from traditional bomb dog work, even at an early age, okay? But it's just a great, great program. Of course, I mentioned that we don't get all of our floppy-eared dogs. It's not just Labradors, we get pointers as well. Springer Spaniels, we just started experimenting on Springer Spaniels. I'm a big Springer Spaniel fan from an explosive detection canine basis. In fact, some of my programs that I managed in Iraq for the US Department of Defense and Department of State, I had a lot of Springers in there. Their white coats, the heat in the Middle East, they're just fantastic energies and drives, especially when you were also using local national handlers. They corrected a lot of their errors because they were so focused on and driven. But we buy dogs from Colombia, of course, the UK, Europe, and so forth. And of course, even here in America, there's a big drive at the minute to produce more dogs. So we are looking for a very high percentile of Labradors, you know, in the 1 percentile. We do buy a lot of traditional bomb dogs as well, which are outstanding dogs. We've got a great traditional bomb dog program, but that vaporweight dog, we have a 28-page kind of scientific testing scoring system from 0 to 5. And it's just a great that we've adopted over the years, and for a dog to pass and become a green vaporweight dog from an outside vendor without coming through our program has to score, you know, 130 plus on the score, and we'll take traditional bomb dogs, very good ones at around 90, you know, down to 60, 70. So you know, it's a good system and robust system. And my point to you guys is that you need to do your homework on these dogs for sure. So look, whilst I can't go into specifics on vaporweight training, as in our own vaporweight training and the things we've learned and the processes, and we've got so it's like a mass jigsaw puzzle that we go through in our training modules to produce these dogs, and that's why they're not cheap. But I can give you a few tips out there. Procurement wise, obviously you're looking for a super environmentally sound, super confident, high energy levels, almost the EDD candidate that excels above all else. You know, we're not saying that very good EDD dogs out there can't become vaporweight dogs of ours. Of course they can. You know, we're just saying, you know, we don't, when clients come to us, the chances are 1 in 150 of coming through this program, just because of the training methodology that they've had from a traditional sense, and being directed by the handlers that are being out in front and all those things. It's cheaper and easier for us to, you know, give them one of our dogs, quite frankly. Floppy-eared breeds, we use Labradors, Pointers, Springer Spaniels. We feel they're the best for mass transit and even pedestrian or passenger screening dogs. Physical conditioning and stamina is paramount. Roading and treadmills, we have roading carts that do up to 1 to 7 miles. It's a set program for the time and duration they're at our academy. But before they leave the academy, they'll be roading 7 miles 3-4 times a week. It's a great program that we have, and we obviously build them up on a set scientific kind of timeline. We have dedicated treadmills in each of the kennel areas as well. So we mix it up a little bit as well. Obviously, you know, these dogs can walk 15 to 20 miles during an event. You know, a lot of our handlers carry the old mobile phones, which show you how many steps and all that good stuff you've done. Well, when you're traversing across thousands of people going into churches, we search people going to casinos, into arenas and stadiums, and you know, the Macy's Day Parade and all these different high volume pedestrian areas. You know, you're going back and forth trying to screen, you know, 20, 30 deep, get into their heat plumes. It is a very physical and very demanding for both your handler and your canines. But that is the way you need to operate if you want to be proficient and keep that dog interested in the game of search. It's not enough to just waltz around with a dog at the end of the leash thinking you're screening people, okay? You have to be super proactive, and the fitness levels of your body-worn detection dog handlers, you know, have to be such that they can meet the fitness levels required from your dog, okay? Odor implantation, the canine out in front, a lot of independence games, a lot of aid placement to shape the search and to raise the canines' heads. And we do a lot of scenarios that encourage air scenting, okay? And we use equipment and all sorts, from moving odor and all those good things. I can't go into too much about it here because, you know, it's kind of our secret sauce, and it's what we're renowned for and all those good things. But we certainly will encourage you when imprinting the canines on the odor to, you know, to get out in front, let the canine get out in front, stop dominating the dog and positioning and pointing out search areas, let him go out and lead you, let the dog have a lot of independence on the games that you're playing, aid placement, shaping, search, get the canines' heads up, not down, all right, because they're going to be air scenting, and kind of scenarios that encourage that. You know, early trailing, focus on moving the odor, okay? Rather than targeting a person in a controlled environment, we need to get into a controlled environment and get that odor moving, okay? And if you can put it in a controlled environment, it's going to help you get that dog. I mean, without going into, all right? You know, focus on moving the explosive odor without people, okay? Get that dog into a controlled environment where he can easily have success, okay? Reduce the canine olfactory threshold by expanding the time and distance between decoy and the time that you traverse the, okay? This is also, it can be measurable and should be, in fact, to guarantee success, you know, some of the advanced trailing that we would do, if we go down to a shopping mall or so forth and so on, we can have a prominent checkpoint in place where pedestrian traffic is coming down the left and pedestrian traffic is going down the right, in an average mall, you know, reasonable, you know, not hundreds of thousands of people. That comes later on in the operational kind of transition. But what we can do is, if we get a divide where, you know, a clock face or a pillar or something like that, we can focus the dog on this side deliberately, where the trainer knows the decoy and knows when the decoy is coming through, as in knows what labor finder or whatever you've hired that day, all right, is going through, knows the odor, knows the poundage of the odor, knows the positioning of the odor on the person, and knows the environment, and all those things, all those data points are collected. And we have electronic iPads with all our trainers with a program management system. It's pretty unique. And off they go. Okay, and rather than traversing them in the usual 5, 10, 15 yards, okay, what you're looking for on this side as you're screening people here is that decoy hitting a marker 10, 20, 30 yards. And then, let's say it's 10 yards initially, then you're traversing this way and there's no visual for the dog, there's no person, no nothing, but you know that that person under those conditions with that amount of odor in this time frame at 10 yards past the traverse has left a certain amount of odor, because we can quantify that. And when that traverse comes in, that dog hits it, nails it, great, on he goes. And then the next scenario, you can maybe increase that to over the side, work in a similar scenario, and you go to 20 and you traverse. And that way, with the same odor and everything else, you're slowly decreasing and slowly reducing the amount of odor threshold in that kind of vapor, heat plume kind of reaction. And that's quite late on in the process, obviously, but it's just a little indication of how you can actually measure trailing distances, okay, and all those things. Decoys, when you use people to carry, we don't always use people. Sometimes we'll lay, move the odor and position the odor down and then bring the dog, and there's no visual whatsoever, and have the dog, pick up on odor and then follow, whether it's multiple turns, multiple levels, staircases, all that good stuff. But when we do use a human decoy in training, that we want to get behind that person's heat plume, we never ever use the same decoy twice. Okay, and we spend a lot of money on we've got a local labor finders, unfortunately, in Anniston, Alabama, where our main training academy is. There's a lot of people out of work, and we work with local labor finder communities to employ those guys. 4 hours, typically 4-hour periods. So we have multiple decoys turn up in the morning and multiple in the afternoon. And the labor finders management recruitment, they understand that we want all sorts, every type of race, creed, ethnic group, ages, disabled, all sorts. We absolutely do not want to discriminate, because we want to keep the dog guessing, okay? And we don't want a visual in any way to play a part in this, all right? Even though we're specifically training on the heat plume, all right? Operationally, program managers, trainers need extensive training to understand body-worn explosive detection, their use and deployment and their sustainment, understanding trailing, maintaining the dog's independence, and the importance of decoy diversity, all play a huge part in the overall success. So, when our clients come to us for body-worn detection dogs specifically for mass screening, we spend a lot of time not just educating the handlers during their 7 weeks of course instruction, but we also spend a lot of time with the entity itself and the management. And we'll even bring their supervisors and put them onto a mass screening troubleshooters 2-week course free of charge, because they're putting so many students through our academy. A lot of the major police departments have done that, and major theme parks which have got large programs, have also done that as well. Okay, so we'll work with you, but it's very important. It's not a case of just it's done, certified, and out you go. These types of dogs operating in mass screening in very challenging environments need a lot of upkeep, okay, and a lot of time, a lot of effort, all right? And it's not cheap, it's expensive, but you've no other choice unless you want a security gap in your security umbrella, okay, be it military, police, or civilian. Unless you want a security gap against body-worn explosives and weapons, we train these dogs on weapons as well, depending on what client requires and requests, okay? Unless you want a security gap, this is what you got to do to get the maximum proficiency in mass screening. From a handler course perspective, guys, we do a 7-week handler course. If you're doing courses for mass screening, then it's important, obviously, you teach these handlers a lot of troubleshooting and a lot of actions on as well. All right, very, very important. All right, just a few final talking points before I show you some videos to finish off. We certify our Vaporwave teams worldwide. We have teams in South Africa and so on as well. That do a great job. That their program out there in Johannesburg, screening people in the airports is fantastic. But certification-wise, we conduct annual certifications on all of our Vaporwave dogs. And there are agencies out there and people out there that want to do a nationally recognized NAPWADA call, IPWADA or whatever WADA. Okay, absolutely, no problems. You want to do that, that's fine. But we don't recommend it, but you can do that. But we are going to be doing our Vaporwave one because quite frankly, it's a lot tougher. It's not obtrusive. There's a lot more greater trailing distances. And quite frankly, although we'll do any of the national standards out there, when we do so in some of our sports venues like Detroit and so on, we'll do it, but we're actually detraining our dogs while we do it because inevitably they set the decoys up so it's the dog can go to them as a productive area. because the majority of people screening dogs are trained. So it becomes a little bit of a backward step for us, but it's only a few days, so it doesn't bother with us. But we do national, all of our agencies and organizations that utilize our dogs, we conduct a very robust, very professional certification process that I think all that take part in it, I will agree, it's one of the toughest out there. And the course duration, I mentioned 7 weeks. Actions on, you know, this is an important question. A lot of guys, I can't tell you how many police chiefs and security conferences and so on, and people have asked, well, I'm not going to get a body-worn detection dog or one of your vaporweight dogs because I've got no actions on. You know, it drives me insane, having operated all around the world, that they would rather somebody walk into their event with an explosive device because they haven't got any SOPs that the dog might find it ahead of time. Just mind-blowing, okay? Look, you can deploy any asset in a routine, low-risk or high-risk scenario. And I mentioned that last week on an operational based training discussion. And the reality is that, you know, perimeters away from the intended target are typically set up to mitigate fatalities, okay? So, you know, we have security on the HQ building, and then we have a perimeter wall, then we have an outside checkpoint, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, the reason we don't just have one is because we want to create a larger standoff and we want to mitigate fatalities. That's the reason, okay? Now, I've had officers and personnel come to me and say, but suicide bomber wants to kill himself, he's going to kill you and the dog handler. Hey, that's the game we're in, okay? I was in that game in traditional bomb dogs in Northern Ireland. My teams were in that game. My fellow handlers were in that game. If somebody wanted to kill us, there's nothing we can do. We could be John J. fucking Rambo and we're going to die, okay? If somebody drives up to our ECP checkpoint or vehicle checkpoint and has a VBID and detonates it upon approaching us, I'm sorry, but we're going to be gone, all right? But that checkpoint was most likely protecting an inner area with a lot more chances of fatality, and the main in target area, like a military DFAC or inside a compound or inside a government building or inside a stadium or arena where hundreds and thousands of people can have fatalities and injuries. So absolutely, you are in the area of body-worn explosive detection, and if somebody wants to detonate, they're going to take you and your canine with you. But if you've used your training on your handler course and your management team has listened also, and you have deployed forward of the intended checkpoint or event area and so on, 152, 250 yards, screening people before they get congested to give them a chance and keep these people safe, not just the ones inside, then you have if it goes off there, then yes, you plus 2 or 3 others and 4 or 5 others may lose their lives, but you stop 20 or 30 in the congested area, the queues outside the gate, and you stopped is getting inside, because quite frankly, they probably got no other method of stopping it, because let's face it, metal detectors are pretty useless against plastic explosives, okay? Now, if my dog is screening out and shows change of behavior on one of the 20, 30 people that's just walked past, and I do a traverse, and that dog suddenly shows change of behavior and starts to follow, and I can clearly see as I pick up my pace that it's the blonde lady with the yellow jacket with her friend stuck next to her, I can, by radio or signals or whatever, radio ahead to the checkpoint, to the police officer, to the security officer, to the military personnel. Yeah, this is Delta 1 4 call sign. You know, I have a yellow jacket, blah, 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 coming towards you. You would have given him the pre-op brief that you're going to be operating 150, 200 yards in a traverse outside of his checkpoint anyway, okay? So the moment you come on the air with his call sign or radio, or whatever you're using, okay, even bloody sign language, okay, he just has to simply look ahead, and he just has to find the dog handler, because the intended target is most likely directly in front, and then get the description or the pointing or whatever you want to bloody use, okay, pigeons if you need to, all right? The moment he gives the sign that he has, or, yep, I've got it from here, eyes on, all right? Your job as a body-worn detection dog handler is to peel off and start traversing all the way back up to your checkpoint, to your traverse area, all right? Because it could be a come on secondary. There's so many damn secondaries that have been out there, Paris, Belgium, and all those other things as well. All right. So it could be a secondary. So again, this gets taught you, and this is what you've got to be thinking about, your SOPs, your actions on, and so on. It's not all doom and gloom, guys, all right? That person can simply go to the yellow jacket, yellow head, blonde head lady, excuse me, ma'am, do you mind, the dog showing a little bit of interest in you as you walk by, do you mind just stepping to one side because you're trying to get them out the pedestrian traffic way? Again, mitigating risk, reducing fatalities. And if it detonates with that officer talking, he's done as good a job as you would have done, okay? Move to one side. You may, in your SOPs, have a designated area that's around a concrete wall or somewhere that's out further in the open, okay? So you've got to think about these things, but don't be scared about actions on and SOPs. And if you guys need any help on that, just email us. You know, I'll leave my email at the end of this talk, okay? So it's important to understand that, all right? Let's go, let's move it on a little bit here. All right, I want to show you a couple of videos. I hope that our internet connection is good enough that they're not too patchy and jumpy, so just bear with us, guys. But I can, again, upload this onto Dropbox and send you guys a link to it. Just email us and we'll make sure that happens, all right? So this first one I'm going to show you is, you know, taken actually from a security camera. And more importantly, you know, it's the dog handler has decided to rest. He's been screening actively in this kind of train station. What he's done now is take a static position and he's basically just letting the dog go to the end of the leash. And you'll see the dog actually go up behind somebody and kind of sniff. He does get quite close in certain areas, but you'll see the value of crossing a heat plume with somebody transiting in a second. Okay, I'm going to stop it here. You can see static and the dog has just gone up to screen that backpack that's behind. Okay, the handler, pretty poor drills there, could have actually controlled it a little bit and pushed up, but it's very difficult. When you stop static in a location like this, your dog wants to get out and search, okay? He wants to get around the air and so on. You know, this is just, this handler in this moment in time is what he's decided to do. More importantly, I want you to look ahead at the guy with the white sweater or jumper, depending on what part of the world you're from the sweater with the blue cap. He's actually carrying explosives. Watch the dog do a 360 clockwise around, okay? And watch, that person has just walked from the bottom left-hand corner direction. And as he's walked with that explosive device, he has left his heat plume and he has left odor behind him. Watch the dog when he does a 360 and he hits that. The terrorist is gone, the decoy is gone. Here we go. Watch this. Pick up, bang. On odor. Look at the dog digging in. Get out of my way. Very quickly, while picking up the pace, clearly the dog handler nails his man. Okay, this next video, the decoy has got the odor in the bag. And the dog, look at the dog, he's a vapor dog, he's just traversing, he's not touching anyone. Watch him turn the handler around. Bang, I'm on odor. Okay, when he was walking up there, the dog was not going and sniffing anybody's crutch. He was just zigzagging through the pedestrian traffic. He's more interested in the air and the odor. Look at this dog's head up, all right? The same stroller comes through, bang, he's on it. Very busy environment. Dog was not going and sniffing any one of those people's butts or anything like that. Just head up, prancing around, air scenting. This is a different company with a vapor dog. And taking a rest, and now he's traversing. Look how many people he's traversing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Dog didn't touch any one of them, all right? You could almost say the dog wasn't bloody working. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, pink, 6, 7. I'm going to stop it here. At least 7 or 8 people, whilst the dog handler is up that side resting, have walked left and walked right, okay? In fact, this guy here with the white shorts and the blue polo top on the left-hand side here, he believes he's going to get past this dog because, as you can see, the dog handler, the back of his shirt has got a square design on. The dog handler and dog are actually facing the other way as this person with the white shorts and tennis shoes transits past. Watch the dog once again and handler pick a traverse after 10, 12 people have walked past. Each one of them has left their heat plume and there is odor because of this guy in the white shorts. Bang. Absolutely nailed him. Non-obtrusively nailed him. Okay. Very quickly in this busy park with great proficiency because of training, nailed that guy. Didn't sniff a single person. Didn't go racing towards anybody. Didn't see them as productive areas. Okay. Just lazy. Here, it's a traditional sense. This decoy is static and the odor is static. So watch the dog hit the scent cone because it is a scent cone because it's been in place. Watch him sit. Now watch the odor move. Odor moves, dog moves. A lot of your EDD dogs would have stayed there waiting to be paid. But the dog, it wasn't about, you know, it was about coming out across odor. In this case, it was in a scent pool and then following it. Here, the device is in a stroller behind the child there. Very difficult environment. Dog's coming towards the camera. Watch him turn around. Look at the dog, turns the handler around, nails the odor on the child. Even with the distraction of the other dog, dog is just focused because he's obedient to odor and not people, okay? Or objects. These are our friends from South Africa. One of their South African Aviation Authority testing scenarios. I just want to show you, it's a short clip, and some of them may even be on the call, we'll find out later. Oh, let me go back. Dog's just going around, look how confident he is. Handler wants to screen there, bang, gotcha. Some nice loose handling there, but again, look, the dog doesn't stop them and go to the bags or go to the people. The hand goes to traverse them, and then the dog picks up the odor from where they've walked past, okay? That's very, very important to see, all right? Same group, just again, great program. This young lady's got a vaporweight canine in an airport setting, as you can see. And she's just doing lots of traverses. I mean, she's just traversing from left to right, and somebody tries to get past her. And this was actually, I believe, part of their certification. Just great effort. She's just taking a line, walking back and forth. The bomb is in the stroller behind the child. Watch this. Bang. Dog didn't need to go to the stroller or search the stroller. Again, it's just head up. Look at that tail. Look at the confidence. That's from the environmental social conditioning, the fitness levels, everything right about the program, because we want to be proficient in mass screening, not people screening. Two different things. Great job there. Absolutely great job. This is actually one of our students going through one of our canine courses. And not to put down the student or the program at this moment in time, but the instructor that's leaning over the end banister there underneath the woman's sign has set up a tripod so he can, advise the young students, I think are in week 2 of their training, how they did. And they're down with a fully trained vaporweight dog. They're down in Atlanta at one of the stations down there. Quite busy because quite difficult for the handler. There's multiple pedestrian traffic flows. So he's just chosen to, traverse left and right. Remember the public there being nosy, and his handling skills aren't the best. You can see that, but he's getting the hang of it. He actually makes a great move there because there was no pedestrian traffic over the right-hand side, which is clearly what he was screening all the way to the end previously when there was. He's learning. and he's realized that to save the dog's energy, he only needs to go to the middle because there's people moving left and right on the left side. But there's nobody over there. There's no productive areas. So why distance your trailing and make things harder for yourself? Okay, it's part of what we do. We teach the handlers to be proficient, okay, and give themselves the best chance of success. The problem is, young handler, he misses the young lady that's clearly behind him. Instead of holding there, because he hasn't seen her, letting her walk past and then casting the dog behind her in her heat plume, he doesn't see her, so he heads back towards the wall, and then she progresses on. And in fact, she progresses on not just past two police officers that are just around the camera shot watching. She actually goes down the station to another level. Watch what happens. Great dog, young handler. Watch the dog, because now she's walked past with Odor. Dog picks up, great change of behavior. Handler doesn't get it because she's too far gone. In fact, another person comes into shot here and he tries to drag the dog to get behind that person. Dog's not having none of it. So eventually he pulls him and goes. Of course, the instructor's rushing to get the tripod to turn it around. This isn't planned. Watch the dog. Those guys have got weapons on. So there's Odor there. The threshold he was following, and he's back on it. Okay. Now she went down the middle staircase. You'll see him pull around the bottom here. He holds his ground, stands still, because he doesn't know the direction, and then off he goes again. And of course, eventually we teach them to raise their hand in the early stages. And as he gets close, they'll confirm it by revealing, by picking up their back jacket or jumper to prove that they're on source. And in the end, he did good old job. Finally, guys, look, body worn detection is wanted everywhere, guys, okay? Those of you in the private sector and so on, military, civilian, law enforcement need these dogs, sports venues, casinos, churches, and so on. Guys, anywhere in this day and age where there's a group of people, and these are all some of our clients, a selection of our clients, but anywhere, guys, that there are people out there, okay, that have got mass transit or personnel numbers per event of 5 to 10,000 plus, need to have some sort of way of screening for body-worn explosive detection, okay? And at this minute in time, dogs represent one of the best areas to do that, especially in mass pedestrian screening where people are moving, quite quickly at walking pace, okay? So as a recap, there are traditional explosive detection dogs that are specifically body-worn for people screening, and of course, mass screening, just like our vaporweight dogs, which are trained in slightly different methods. But, all of our four-legged furry friends play a vital part, and body-worn detection dogs as a whole, do offer a great detection value, great deterrent value, okay? We know that for a fact. History tells us that canine teams have deterred plots, okay? And these dogs, instead of being back of the house like traditional bomb dogs, go in and search venues and areas and compounds before something happens, these dogs are very much front of the house, okay? So there's a great visual deterrent aspect to these dogs. And there's also a feel-safe value. People aren't silly. They know that there's danger in the world and there's terrorism cells in every state, and these things are happening, and they worry when they go to large events and so forth. So having these dogs, so confident, so friendly, floppy-eared, very, well-trained, adapt to the environment because of all the training, etc. There's a great feel-safe value for people as well, and that plays a huge part. Okay. With that, guys, I'm going to say thank you very much and open it up to some questions, and I'll take a breath and take a beer. My information's on the screen there, and also Christy Dober, one of our business development ladies, former military canine handler herself. Her email's on there as well. Should you want to learn any more about canines, the courses, the dogs themselves for sale. We also lease the dogs, you know, to help police departments and organizations as well. So yeah, guys, I don't know if there's any questions. Let me have a look. See if I can see some of the chat. Okay, I can see. Hey guys, oh, I can see a comment here. Let's have a look. What reward, if any, is used to keep the dog motivated after it is peeled off, etc.? Great question. So obviously there's two areas here. One is a live operation where, you know, you have had a change of behavior in your dog and you have handed that off. Obviously, in those types of scenarios, I would do a massive praise off for the dog, okay, and then get him back to work. All right, huge praise off, just like I would operationally with my traditional bomb dogs and so on. You know, because I don't want to be loitering around with as a possible device and so forth. And there could be a secondary in these types of scenarios. When you look at the last 7 to 8 body-worn explosive attacks worldwide, okay? Normally multiple attackers and so forth, just like Boston, all right? So if it's operational setting, then I wouldn't reward, just in case it's you know, not an explosive device for whatever reason, whether it's residual and so forth and so on. But in training, I would peel off and reward my dog. And we would typically reward with a Kong because we can feed the Kong with a string or a ball with a string because we can feed it instantly into the mouth and then play the game of tug, but keep it safe. You know, you're not chucking that ball anywhere, so it's going down the street or amongst other crowds of people and your dog's tripping people up on a long leash or whatever. Okay, so yeah, praise, maybe hit him with a Kong stroke ball with a rope on, and just play that tugging game for a little bit. But more importantly, end it quickly and get him back to work, because people are walking past you. It's an operational setting. When it's not an operational setting, then you can play that a little bit longer, and then you may even be able to utilize a tennis ball or so on in the right, safe setting. All right, so next question I can see here is from Christopher Garcia. If there is more than one person carrying a device and the dog catches a scent from more than one plume, how do they normally respond? That's a great question. So my dog's just shown change of behavior on personnel, and I picked up my pace and I've got him focused behind what I believe is the person or persons, okay? Clearly it's like they're together and all of a sudden they just split like a V. Whether they've seen the dog or whatever, as they approach, they split. The reality is that if they're both carrying explosive devices, then your dog could effectively go one way or the other. If one's carrying more than the other, or there's more odor coming off, depending on his clothes, his jacket, and all the rest of it, the dog may choose to go with the greater scent picture, okay, because it kind of equals a speed up towards reward. The bottom line is your dog will pick one of them. He's not going to split himself in half, as I know you know. But instantly, you've had change of behavior in an operational setting, and you go through your SOPs and procedures. You need to inform these people. If I was in Iraq, Afghanistan, and I had a body-worn vaporweight dog out there, and I was screening people non-obtrusively, especially Middle East, they're quite like the canine side of things, so I was keeping my trailing distance, and I split with 2 people, I would be calling lockdown, lockdown, lockdown over my radio, and the place would literally shut down, okay, until I explain further, okay, because it's more important. You have deterred or detected a presence of explosives trying to enter this event, this government building, this stadium, and so on. okay? It's more important if you lose track because they split, that you instantly lock down, either by radio, by command, either they're facing the east gate of something or the back gate of somewhere, lock that gate down, okay? Make signals, no matter what you have to do, okay? You need to stop these people that they split, okay? And the whole stadium becomes on alert structure because your dog has just indicated, all right? But that was a great question. Mark Dransman, I apologize, I got your name wrong. How many live detections and positive results as the program had? That's another good question. We have had, just in 2019 alone, we've had 2 explosive devices. One we can't talk about, and one our South African friends kind of had, and the rest of them over 30 weapons detection fines. Some of our dogs are, a lot of our dogs are explosive and weapons detection because our clients ask for them. Everything from the NFL having 4 or 5 live weapons fines that shouldn't have been where they should have been, to president inaugurations with Secret Service being where they shouldn't have been, to theme parks where we've got dogs deployed, arenas, stadiums. Now, it's granted that 99% are going to be, you know, legal carries or whatever, off duty this, off duty that. Disney's another classic example that had 13 of our dogs, vaporwave dogs originally, and we're having a lot of weapons fines. But it's just still a great indicator. The NYPD, the commissioner, former commissioner, Bill, tells a great story in a presentation I was listening to, where one of his vaporwave teams actually gave a change of behavior and indicated on a person, and they stopped that person and obviously moved him out pedestrian traffic flows and further questioning and so on, revealed that he had nitroglycerin pills, okay? And the dog nailed him, all right? So yes, we are having fines. Obviously, there's not masses of suicide attacks, explosive attacks here in the United States at this moment in time, but we never get complacent. It's nice to see our dogs are having some fines and reinforcing that fact that they're proficient in those areas, just in testing and QA/QC type scenarios, you know. But it's a great question. Thank you so much. Paul, thanks again for the information. Update my education, although many years of experience, and thanks again. Shelly Gutierrez, you are most definitely welcome, my friend. All right, guys. Is there any more questions? I don't know if the organizer can release some of the vocal or audio settings, so some of you can, you know, ask some questions rather than not type. But William Kraft mentions here that what is the lowest threshold that you utilize to train your dogs? I won't go into specifics on the threshold, but I think it's widely understood and read about now, and there's plenty of well-published papers, and my email address is down there if you want me to point you in the direction of some. But our canines have now been proven that they can, that the threshold can go down to parts per trillion. You know, unlike previous thinkings around the parts per billion. And I think, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the nearest machines are currently at parts per billion. So our canines, and that's all we can measure, guys, at this moment in time. I expect them to go even further than that. Our canine olfactory still amazes us today. Anyone that tells you that they understand it or what thresholds it can go down to, quite frankly, is lying, which is why there's so much money involved with some of these agencies and some of these academia to try and learn more about the canine olfactory and how it processes and all those good things. So from us, from a perspective, with the amount of weight that we're carrying when we're doing training, there's two sides to this. We train train hard to fight easy. And that's always been a kind of mental attitude that I've had. And, you know, when you look historically about body-worn explosive attacks, I think the average weight is around 15 to 25 pounds of explosive. Look at Boston and so on. There's been a lot bigger out there, but typically around 20 to 25 pounds. Now, let's say there's about 10 to 50 of actual explosive weight, okay? In that regard, we carry around 10 to 20 pounds and train our dogs in that. We train hard to fight easy. So what we're gonna do is go down probably half a pound, typically a pound when we're starting dogs off, and because we want better vapor pressures and all those good things, we'll pick certain, odors to start with, like smokeless powder and all those good things. We want to give the dog every chance of success in the game of search. Typically we'll go down to about half a pound. But once you go down to that half a pound on a body, then it becomes the distance that you're setting, the trailing distance, and measuring that where you're intersecting your dog. Because half a pound in a static object is always going to be there, depending on how much surface area there is, depends on how much odor that replicates, right? If it's closed, in, half a pound of explosive closed inside a device, then you're not going to have much surface to air. It's going to probably mimic a few grams, okay? So there's a lot of factors, which is why it's not a definitive question to answer. But if you've got half a pound as your lowest amount of odor, and you work on setting traverse thresholds of when a dog can actually detect this odor particles being left behind as a person walks by, that's a great way of knowing your canine's boundaries, and more importantly, assessing them and doing, proactive training. Remember, regular, progressive, and corrective training is what I talked about last week. So if your dog's hitting a person because he's been trained on a person with half a pound of an explosive odor on, but that person then walks past and you go 2 or 3 yards away and he's not hitting, you need to do training in between there to get that dog realizing that this is productive, and more importantly, lowering that threshold. And eventually you'll extend it out to 5 yards, 10 yards, 15 yards, 20 yards. As this person walks past, we know with science that there's odor particles being left behind in that heat plume. Science has proven that, okay? Which is the basis of our mass pedestrian training. Brandon Frey, thank you for another great class. No, you are most welcome. Thank you so much. Somebody mentioned specific odors like PETN and so on. Look, guys, whether it's RDX based, TNT based, and so on, we don't have much problems, with odor. We really don't, especially when it's on a person, it's cooking on a person, the body heat helps it and so on. As long as we've taken that olfactory threshold down, and this dog understands that sampling the heat and air for small minute particles is the new game. Hallelujah. We actually see better energy levels in body-worn detection dogs because they're not seeing 1,000 shiny objects around them as cookie jars. Let me give you an example. If I brought a traditional EDD dog in here to search this area in my home, I can see probably 400 areas that are productive to my dog based on training, from chairs to plug sockets to productive areas around the room to objects to lamps to bottles on the floor to all sorts, okay? And the dog is seeing all those with his vision as a productive cookie jar, and his eyes olfactory. It's just non-stop. Remember, our body-worn detection dogs aren't trained that all these areas are shiny and cookie jars. They're just there to sample the air and heat. So we actually see more productive area, a better production out of them, that they're just sampling the air, their heads up, they're making their way through the crowds and they're sampling the air, okay? It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to see, William Kraft, thank you. Megan, do you perform blind or surprise training runs for the handlers? How do they perform? Oh, 100%. We call it red teaming, 100%. And we do it in front of our clients as well. In fact, some competitors out there, we've behind the scenes told police departments and organizations to bring our dogs in so we can compete for the business. I mean, absolutely, that's what it's all about. If you spend the time and effort and resources and money and all those things, you want to shine it off, right? You want to show it. It's just like when you buy a new car or new jacket or whatever, you want to go out and wear it. That's what it's all about. It's the people that don't do it and don't want to put the time and effort in and know are not suitable for this task or so on. They're the ones that are hiding in the corner with a, in and around people and not wanting to go out and shout it from the rooftop. I'm here talking to you about body-worn explosives and asking you to challenge me with questions because I've probably asked them all already or over the last 6 years, But great question. Thanks for great class. Norway goes to sleep. Norway, thank you so much. It's great to have somebody from Norway on the call. Where are you all from? My goodness, Norway. Thank you for a very professional presentation. Thank you so much for joining us. All from Germany, thank you so much. Great again. Here are the pros and cons of using scent logics. Oh my goodness, Mr. Redondo Beach. Scent logics. Look, I won't talk specifically about scent logics because David is a good friend of mine. We have online debates every now and again. I don't get involved too much in online stuff, but he's one person that I will debate when he says it's better than real, because it's quite frankly untrue. And the reality is that we still don't know canine olfactory and all those good things, but I can tell you that real odor, real explosives, real odor, is the only thing to train on. And you need to train on suit because of operational deployment or restrictions and all those good things, then feel free to do so. But know that, part of, let's say, his product also has some other ingredients in there, let's say. A lot of other chemicals in there, silica powder is always present, cotton bags are always present, and don't think for 1 second that they aren't part of your dog's new scent picture, because they are. And, so yes, there's a time and place for them. I think every government study out there has shown so far, has shown them to be about 17–18% proficient again, when a dog is imprinted on real, and vice versa. They've got their place if you don't have access, but I'm not a great fan, right? Just being open and honest. But I've stayed alive for 30 years, training real to fine real, and he knows it. We have good debate. I think he plays an important part, and his pseudo product plays an important part for those dog handlers that can't have it and want to mimic the odor that's coming from the ingredients. And I think it's important. But where possible, guys, get access to real, share. And if you've got real, help others that have not. It's very important to do so. I'll never turn anyone away from my academy, and lots of law enforcement agencies that can't have access to real do come to our agency and just turn up, and we will always fit them in and go out of our way to get their dogs and re-imprint them in most cases and all that good stuff. All right. Josh McCorville, very professional. Thank you so much. Someone else asked, but I think I missed, do you train plain clothes to work near dog teams or takedowns at apprehension? Oh, right. That's a great question. So I mentioned routine and low risk and high risk. So when you're deploying, I'll give you a good example. I watched a great demonstration with US Capitol Police's vaporweight dogs some time ago. And they had a high risk threat of an attack in the subways, very, very busy subways. So what they were doing, they were in high risk mode, and they were working their vaporweight dog in a rectangle. And because there was multiple lines coming through, very busy. So what they did was they hit a 4-post rectangle, and they would traverse, and traverse. And it worked out that nobody could walk through the rectangle, whichever direction they were going, without, the dog getting to them within 20 to 30 seconds, okay, which is great, right? And then what they did is the dog team was concentrating, because it's so busy, I'm talking thousands, all right, head down, dog just making his way through, sample in the air. What they did was they worked with several no uniform personnel, civilian clothes, and they were the takedown teams, okay? And when that dog broke the rectangle outwards, the teams positioned themselves and went in on the dog, and when the dog had clearly identified who, they went in wrist, and then took the person down. It was so impressive to see. But here's the reality. 90% of the time, certainly in America now, we're more likely to not be in that high risk state. look, we always have to research intelligence. And we're more likely, look at Boston and so on, to receive an RC attack, radio control, or a time of power unit attack. In fact, terrorism over here, these jihad converts and so on, they actually want to do damage and then live to fight another day to do more damage and so on. Just like Boston, where they placed the cookers down at the finish, the pressure cookers down at the finish line, and they went on, okay? So we're in a different scenario. We have to take that into account, that when we come across a change of behavior, if that person's carrying a suicide vest or a device, more likely a body-worn device to use, whether it's pipe bombs, whether it's something to lay down, a bag with an RC device in it, and so on, we have got time. We've got time to use a time of power unit, and we've got time to engage if it's an RC device, especially if they're the ones that want to drop it down and move on and detonate, okay? Because their cell might be small. So in the West, we're a little bit, you know, Intel says we're less likely to have a suicide bomber and more likely to have an RC or time of power unit. So we do have time to say, excuse me, can you move to one side? Can you come over here? And so on. If they start to run or reach for something, then you don't need a dog anymore. You go through your SOPs and challenge that person. Rules, mitigation of force, rules of the use of force, whatever your department, military and police does. Now in the Middle East, that's certainly a different picture. You know, if our dogs show changing behavior outside a compound or a gate, or someone with, you know, local nationals walking towards us or something like that, absolutely, we would have to assume straight away that this was a suicide bomber and it was victim activated or personnel activated, and we have to assume that way. And our SOPs may use deadly use of force, lethal use of force. So great question. Oh, somebody's from Finland. Thank you so much for being on. I hope you can understand my ridiculous you know, English accent. How often, Luke says, how often do you get false responses? Look, of course you do. One of the ironic things is our academy is in Anniston, Alabama, where everyone's carrying around weapon systems and all the rest of it. So absolutely, from time to time, you'll get it. But you know, there's nothing stopping you in training to say, excuse me, my dog has just showed change of behavior. Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm carrying my weapon system. It's a great, almost live find you didn't have planned, and it's a weapon system that and rounds that have never been used before, or they may have residual on them. We've had dogs hit somebody and it's been doing where, you know, hey, my game is explosives. I was just in a quarry blowing up outside of here, you know, and I'm probably smell of and then we've had times which we just can't explain, where the dog has showed an unbelievable change of behavior on some and you know, literally digging in and pulling, and we've got there and we've questioned and so on, and the person's been fine, and we've allowed that person to proceed into the arena or to the stadium or whatever, but we've done our job. It's better to be safe than sorry. It's better that a dog shows a little bit of change of behavior on something that may resemble the odor of a device or a component part of a device and so on, and we can stop that person, question them out. We're not talking about pulling a weapon system out and killing them here, okay? So that's kind of what I'm talking about. Lim Buck, great refresher. You're always true and professional. Thank you so much. Community, hope to see you soon in Phoenix. Yes, you're going to Phoenix, Lim. We are, my company, VW Canine, is the head sponsor for HITS in Phoenix. So we hope to see everybody there, and I'll certainly want to share a few Jack Daniels with you guys. That's my drink of choice. Little Chin, always great listening to you and learning new things. Thank you. No, thank you. I really appreciate that. David Arnold, appreciate it as usual. Thank you so much. Okay, guys, is there anything else? Any more points or questions? And guys, look down to the bottom left of the screen. My information's there. That is my personal email, work email. And if you want to learn more and receive an info pack on Vaporwave canines or our VW Canine Academy courses, especially the advanced courses or the Vaporwave basic dog handler course, or if your department's thinking about this, you want to lease the dog rather than buy the dog, we'll work with you guys. We're quite a large company and well financially backed, and we'll work with your departments, whether military, police, or civilian, and all over the world as well, which we do. But the biggest point, guys, is there absolutely is a difference between traditional bomb dogs, dogs that are trained to see people as productive, and people screening dogs, and mass screening. And if you want to operate truly in mass screening where people are disorganized, walking past you 20, 30, 40 deep, and so on, you definitely have to think about your canine selection, how you're in training that dog, your environmental conditioning, your fitness of that dog, teaching the dog to follow the odor and not persons or objects, increase that trailing distance, and work on your use and deployment and SOPs, and put a very strong program in place. And if you do have greatest success in mass screening for body-worn explosives and weapons, and that's critical. And if you do not do those things, I promise you, your program is operating at a very low proficiency of detection, and you can get caught out in a very challenging climate at the minute, because the threat is out there, guys, not just from terrorist organizations around the world, but state, local, city, nut jobs that are out there that want to do people harm as well. And we're in that position to help. All right. Guys, I'm going to leave it there, and I thank you so much. Please do get in touch, and have a great day. And I'll toast you all in the canine community. Thanks.